why it's really important to have a plan and understand what your goals are.
In fact, my camel out there is suffering right now with a broken back.
So I actually found Pepe when it was only a couple of hours old, and I'm like, oh, this is a funny meme.
Oh my god.
Yo! Who is this Degen?
The old man is swing trading over years at a time. And it's like, that's where the real money is made.
The answer is a permanent loss. With single-sided staking, you don't have to worry about impermanent loss.
Really, at the end of the day, it's just the matter of a macro market. It's just what happens.
If you're aware, if you're disciplined, you can hone that into further financial growth.
Financial freedom, so where you can actually live life and not have to be constantly living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, more or less, right?
Welcome to another episode of the Degen Roundtable. I am your host tonight, Anonymous Bean, and we have some special guests from the Actuator protocol. Bill, RJ, how you guys doing?
Doing great.
Doing good. Thanks, man.
Very excited to have you. It's been a few weeks since we have had a guest on the channel, and I think that this is one that the community's been really excited about, one that I have been personally looking forward to. You know, we've had some other similar protocol guests on this show in the past, and they've gone over really well with the community, and so I think this is a really good opportunity. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. We know that time is your most valuable asset. Spending that with us is a great opportunity to grow and learn. And we had some discounts the last couple days, and so if you had some spare cash to potentially get into the market, that may have been a good idea. We had the Fed meeting today, so they reduced interest rates by 0.25, which is good, but the Fed was also a little hawkish, and so that scared the markets a little bit. And anytime that the markets are spooked, numbers go down a little bit. But don't worry, this is normal in a bull cycle. This is normal for where we're going in 2024 and 2025. So our thesis has not changed. I mean, think about it. We had a dip and Bitcoin's still at 100,000. Okay, like let's put this into perspective. I know people like to freak out, especially people that haven't been in the market for many cycles. Bill, I know you've been in the market for quite a few cycles and in traditional markets prior to the crypto markets. So we're excited to have you, have your wisdom. For those of you who don't know me, I am Anonymous Bean. Most people also know me as Brendan, one of the original founders of the Degen Roundtable, and super excited to be here for host. I haven't hosted in a while, actually. Will has been our stand-in host for a while, and he's been doing a fantastic job at it. So hopefully I can live up to his expectations. Let's just get into the co-hosts here, and then we will introduce our special guests. Nate, how you doing, buddy?
I am doing well, except for the fact that I am sick, and it's negative degrees out here. So aside from that, though, I'm doing great. I was just looking at some charts. I was doing some interesting things with fractals and how the alt season is going to go. Really deeply looking into that because it's going to be some pretty crazy stuff. However, I will say it's good to talk to you guys again there, Bill and RJ. I've said it before. I'll say it again. The Actuator, like I've been singing this to the heavens, the Actuator is basically just another story that's been built on the skyscraper, the financial building, the financial powerhouse that is Hex. And this was probably one of the most necessary things that needed to be built on Hex, I would say. So yeah, no, I'm glad you guys are here. Let's go ahead and get into it. But before we do that, go ahead and send it right over to Will Stevenson with the Degen Roundtable. How you doing, buddy?
Aloha, amigos. I'm doing fantastic. I'm just chilling up here in the Great White North. It just started snowing again earlier today, so I was like, I was hoping to have a snow-free Wednesday, but there's some of the powder is laying back down on the ground, and so prepared for the cold winter to start up again. We had some good stuff over the week, but now it's time for the cold again. So it's great up here in New Hampshire. It's lovely. It's beautiful. Been getting a lot of stuff done up here, just doing a whole lot of woodworking and building stuff, and then checking out the crypto markets whenever cool things is happening, such as the Actuator. I'm super stoked to get into the topics today and see what we can learn and see what we can teach the audience at home. So let's hop on into it.
Yeah, so I guess we'll start with introductions. Bill, you want to go first, and then RJ after that. Just tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, how you guys got into crypto, how you got into building. Well, let's start with it, just yourself. Let's start into how you got into crypto and what got you interested in building.
Yeah, sure. Well, appreciate that. Appreciate being here again with you guys and talking with your folks. As a quick background, the first half of my professional life was actually nuclear submarines. So I spent a lot of time in the U.S. Navy and a lot of time underwater in the technical side of the world, working with reactors and all kinds of other cool things. And parlayed that in the late 90s out of engineering and into finance. Found myself in investment banking, specifically in trading and sales for institutional bonds. So the bond market was my second half of my life from the mid 90s forward for quite a while, which meant that I was square in the middle of the 2008 financial crisis on Wall Street in the middle of the bond market, watching while the Federal Reserve's activities that led to that turned around and created quite a crisis. And all of the fallout from that, QE1, QE2, twist, QE3, 4, and what's now QE infinity. And around 2013, while in the middle of that era, I stumbled across this thing called Bitcoin and initially ignored it like most of us do. A few months later, got drawn in pretty deeply. And then mixing the technical side of my background with the financial side at that point, noticing the problems in the existing financial market, the global macro environment, and getting very concerned about how we did what we did in finance, had determined that I wanted to work myself out of what I considered to be the problem and into what I was recognizing was the solution. And that began my pursuit from that point forward into the crypto world until I retired out of the bond market in 2017 fully. Went full-time in crypto from that point forward, doing Ethereum mining with a partner and a lot of other things all through 2014, 15, 16, and beyond. And then met RJ somewhere in about that area and began to do some work with him. We'll let him introduce his background, but have been full force in crypto since.
Excellent.
So yeah, I'm RJ. My co-founder C3Works. We go back decent ways as far as crypto history goes. You know, whatever, half of Bitcoin's life we've kind of known each other, I guess. But you know, at the time when he first came to me, I was in enterprise software. I was in traditional finance building enterprise software, which was going really well at the time. I was on a good career trajectory. I got introduced to my co-founder, told me about crypto. I got the initial high, was really into it, and then as prices dropped, I had an equivalent drop in interest, as maybe a lot of us feel like in that first cycle. So then I went all in on traditional finance, and you know, I fell for all kind of the normal, usual suspect traps when it comes to crypto. But then I kind of had a reawakening, I guess, around 2020. I got reconnected with my co-founder here, C3, and I really, you know, kind of took a deep dive from there. And again, I come from like the software background, so that's, I guess, the angle I come at it from. And I remember going through a textbook on how to build smart contracts, and that was really kind of the eye-opening moment for me. I was just, you know, I finally saw kind of at the base layer what is now technically possible, and you know, that being, you know, digital scarcity is now possible, and that has huge implications. It took me a few more years. It took me 2 more years to like finally see it. You know, at a certain point, you know, it's like when somebody asks you like, oh, why should I pay attention to crypto? Like, I feel like for me, my brain kind of melts because I'm like, well, what angle do I even approach this from? And I think there reached a point where I was like, no matter what angle I look at it from, it's like whether it's technical or whether it's financial or whether even ethical, like I think crypto eliminates a lot of moral hazards in that a lot of the traditional finance struggles with. Granted, we're all degens here, so maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know, but yeah, I just, you know, from whatever angle you look at it, it was just like the totality of it was like, I just have to give this space full time. And so about, I don't know, like 2.5, 3 years ago, me and C3Works, we just started building stuff together, and I did it full time with him. And so we've done a whole lot of stuff in the Hex ecosystem, a whole lot of stuff with HSIs. That's been a big focus of ours, and just building internal portfolio tools and internal, dashboards and scripts to perform whatever on-chain transactions and portfolio management and whatever tax management, the whole gamut we've been working on. So that's kind of how I got to this point. And yeah, that was a lot of those things we worked on are ultimately what led to kind of the genesis of the concept of Actuator.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to get into it. Before we get into Actuator protocol, we do always like to shout out our community, all the people that are watching here. So we are going to give a quick shout out to all of those in the chat. Will says it's time for chat shout outs. So that's what we're going to do. Thank you, Will. First, and let's go Degen gang. Let the bread with Sonic. Let's get the bread with Sonic. That is from West. Nice job on the first. Centurion 54X, always in the chat. Hello, Degens. Welcome. Cotton Trust. Love the discipline of TradFi and the DeFi space. It really does help. Does help with that experience. Moonpilled Rational Optic says, have a holly jolly Degen Christmas. May everyone's gains come true. Thank you, brother. Likewise. It's a little pullback before the Christmas pump. Kay Hudson, what's up? What's up? And Tam, our family. What is up, fam? Great to see you. One of the number one onboarders for the Pulse Chain and Hex ecosystem. Always doing a great job there. And when we talk about going Pulse Chain conference using Degen discount, love to hear it. I don't know if Bill or RJ, if you guys are going to the Pulse Chain conference, but the Degen Roundtable, we had actually our discount code got used the most, I believe, out of any of the discount codes. So we have a very active community within the Pulse Chain space. We have a great active community within the Hex space, and we are excited to always learn more and see who's building on this protocol, because the more we build, the more we bring people in, the more we talk about it, the more people get excited. I mean, even just the past few weeks, we've had some big influencers kind of just wake up to the Pulse Chain and Hex ecosystem, and that is really fantastic to see. I think we got a couple more chat shout-outs, and then we will hop into it. Hex Monkey, great seeing the Actuator team here today. Great to have you too, Hex Monkey. Danny Boy, gang guy. Good to see you. I believe that does it for the first round of chat shout-outs. So that is excellent. So let's get into it. So Bill, you talked about getting into Bitcoin and seeing the value in that. Some people might just say that Hex is a better built Bitcoin, and therefore the more that we can build to help Hex is only going to improve its value compared to Bitcoin. So I'm excited to hear about this Actuator protocol today, and I have a little bit of familiarity with it. And, like I've said previously, our community knows about liquid loans. A lot of them have used it in the past. They've used the other sort of loan protocols within the Pulse Chain community, and this is another great opportunity because it builds off Hex, right? So we've worked with Pulse, we've worked with Pulse X, and now we have a protocol that really brings a unique value to Hex, and it is a little different from the other protocols that we've talked about before. And so I do want to highlight and show those differences because I think there's some unique things in this protocol that are really cool and that are going to be really of interest to the community. So why don't you give us a brief overview of what the Actuator protocol is and what you're trying to do to bring value to Hex with it?
Well, why don't I kick that off with a couple of high-level comments, and we can go from there with RJ. So there's some simple answers, and there are more complicated, rich answers. So I'm going to start with simple. We'll deal with the more richer, complex ones as we go, but there's some sophistication to it. At its simplest level, it is a protocol that allows individual Hex stakers to be able to get a market-disciplined liquidity out of a Hex stake. There's a lot in that, but what that means is if I have this capital asset that a Hex stake is, I'd like to be able to get some element of liquidity out of there. We don't want to ruin what Hex is about, the idea of delayed gratification and locking up. The idea isn't to just open Pandora's box, but it is to give access to capital in a fairly elegant way because A, life happens. B, there's times you want to be able to diversify a portfolio. And C, you might want to capitalize on more staking or more other types of investment activities. So capital goes where it's treated best. And coming out of the institutional world, what I know, we'd like to attract larger and more institutional money. We'd probably like to have more dollars pouring into the space. You get that by providing tools for managing risk. And what that looks like is the types of liquidity access that the Actuator protocol provides. So we bring together those who would like to offer liquidity with those who would like to buy the liquidity. And we make a market on that so that it's a market-based access at all different points across the maturity spectrum or the number of days. So what we believe we're going to see happen is that Hex, as a native asset, as a reserve asset for this ecosystem, will have an emerging yield curve unfold where the market measures what the discount rate is or what the cost, the time value of money is for each spot along the curve all the way out. And that's much like what we have in, say, traditional markets with the treasury yield curve. The fact that we have such a curve is a backbone of traditional finance because it's a reliable market-based ruler on which you can build your financial house. Without a reliable measure of what money is worth at different points in time, it would be very difficult for capital committers and allocators to forecast and build their tools on top of that. So we want to foster an environment where there's a lot of building that can occur because we have a reliable market-based yield curve, and that comes as people buy and sell individual accesses to their own liquidity. So I'll pause and let RJ add a component to that.
So that's a good high-level explanation. I'll try and connect it with the listeners right now about like, okay, I own a Hex stake. What does this actually mean for me? So suppose you have an HSI today, and you've accrued a lot of rewards in it, but you can't actually you can't access those rewards because you don't want to EES, you don't want to emergency end stake that stake because you blow up your rewards. We all know the feeling, and this is part of the beauty of Hex. With that being said, we believe there should be a way for you to loan against that HSI if it's so valuable and it's ultimately backed by a solid asset, that being Hex underneath. We should be able to take that asset and mint tokens against it that represent ownership in that asset that you can then use, to take advantage of an opportunity or to handle life circumstances. So from the onset, we had this problem. We have all these stakes, but we want to put those assets to work. How do we do that? And so at a very basic level, one issue with taking out loans in general is that you might get liquidated because your collateral might not meet the value of the loan. So that's obviously the blow up risk we all fear, is that liquidation risk. What's unique about these Hex stakes, though, is that the Hex stakes, we know exactly how much Hex they've earned, how much Hex they've accrued. And so our protocol, what it does, it allows you to mint the amount in Hex that your stake is worth. So let's take a concrete example. Let's say I have a stake maturing in 1,000 days. And let's say that stake has 100 Hex in principal and 50 Hex in rewards. Well, that principal, 100 Hex, and my rewards to date, 50 Hex, our protocol allows you to mint 150 what we're calling Hex time tokens, which are backed 1-to-1 by the value of your stake. And so in other words, the loan that you've taken out is fully collateralized. And because Hex stakes only grow in value, it's impossible for your collateral to be less than your loan value. And so you're never at risk of liquidation because it's rock solid collateral that will be there when the loan has to be called upon or has to be returned, if you will. So So this is kind of the breakthrough of our protocol, is that, you know, it's this liquidation free, it's free of counterparty risk, it's free of liquidation risk. You're able to mint these tokens against the value of your stake, and the amount of tokens you can mint can never exceed the underlying value of that stake. And then you can put those tokens to work. You don't have to emergency end stake. Not to mention, you retain ownership of your stake as far as all the future collateral that it's going, or future value that it's going to accrue. So in other words, you can continue to draw more and more of a loan against the stake and put that value to work as your stake grows in value. So hopefully that makes it more concrete in terms of like, okay, how do I use Actuator to put my stakes to work? Am I tracking with you guys? How am I doing? How are we doing?
Yep, good.
Nice. Okay. Do you mind if I share my screen? I'm gonna throw open the DApp here. So this is the Actuator DApp.
Got it.
Again, I'm going to try to say as concrete as we can. So this table here shows your hex stakes that have been delegated or deposited into the Actuator protocol. And so I have 3 stakes here, and you're going to see a lot of things that are familiar that you'll recognize right away. Like, you know, a given stake has T-shares, it has progress, you know, and it has an end day. It has a principal, and it has accrued rewards. So nothing new there. Those are just normal hex properties of hex stakes. Again, but what Actuator does is it leverages the properties of the hex stake, the properties of the hex protocol. The Actuator protocol is able to determine, okay, what was my principal and what are my rewards? And from there, you're able to mint, again, what we're calling these hex time tokens against these 2 amounts. And so in this example here, you can see I've extracted 2.5 million hex time tokens, because that's roughly my principal. And every day that my accrued rewards increases, I can extract more and more of these hex time tokens. So it's available to extract, represents, you know, that daily increasing amount of hex that is able to be collateralized and minted against in this stake. And so the question then becomes, okay, I have all these. So this HTT 7000 token, it's essentially a hex derivative. It's backed 1-to-1 by hex. These are the tokens that you mint against your hex stake. It's backed 1-to-1 by hex, and it's redeemable 1-for-1 for hex when the underlying stake eventually matures, which is, in this case, it's in 2039. So all these tokens are hex, essentially 1-to-1 hex, but with a time delay. So that's what makes it such a good loan, is that the token that you're receiving in this loan is effectively hex, but it has it's kind of like, you could think wrapped hex with a delayed redemption day until you can actually redeem it 1-for-1 for hex. In the same way that if you have wrapped pulse, you can exchange it 1-for-1 for pulse. It's kind of like that, but in this case, you have to wait until a particular future day to make that exchange.
Right. So just, if I don't mind me jump in here a second. So yeah. So once you hit day 7,000, which is 2039, or in your other 2 cases, day 3,000 or 5,000, those are sort of the 3 standard HTT tokens that you were able to sort of mint through your stakes. Now, of course, because we're so far out from day 7,000, my guess, and I've already looked at the prices of all of these tokens, is that the 7,000 tokens, since it's further away, would be worth the least amount. And as you get closer to the days where these are maturing, those HTT tokens are very likely to get very close, if not identical, to the price of hex, since they're going to become exactly redeemable 1-for-1 on that day. And so there's a value for people that might want to, hey, I can afford to buy these liquid now, and then once this day X comes, I can redeem those for the hex. But on the other side of it, some people might just want to mint these, put them into pools, put them into farms, and find a way to sort of increase their value while their hex is still accruing in their hex stakes.
Yeah, exactly. So you hit on the important concept, and it's that these tokens, like you just said, we're going to expect that they're going to trade at a discount to hex. But as it approaches its redemption day, it should reach 1-to-1 with hex. And if it doesn't, it's immediate profit that you'll be able to take advantage of. Because again, if it's trading If it's trading less than Hex, then just buy it and then redeem for Hex to lock in a profit.
It's just an arbitrage at that point.
Yeah, it's pure arbitrage. You know, people throw around the term arbitrage, and sometimes, you know, it's not like a strict arbitrage where, you know, can you actually guarantee immediate profits? In the case of HTTs, if on a given HTT redemption day, if it doesn't equal 1-to-1 for Hex, you have a pure arbitrage opportunity where you can gain immediate and riskless profit. And so, yeah, so arbitrage in the purest of sense. So we'd expect extremely efficient markets here. You know, we wouldn't expect deviations above or below on redemption day. But what would be rational is that we would expect, you know, these HTTs to trade less than Hex on, you know, before its redemption day. And so that's where the price of these Hex time tokens is important to look at. So let's look at HTT 7000. So again, that's effectively Hex with a delayed redemption date, that being on Hex day 7000. So this is the HTT 7000 priced against Hex. And so right off the bat, you notice that the correlation is almost a 1-to-1 correlation, which we would expect given that, you know, they're effectively identical assets, again, with that time delay though. And so, you know, you're not going to find a tighter correlation among assets in Pulse chain, you know, unless it's like, you know, with the exception of like wrapped Pulse versus Pulse, the correlations are going to be extremely tight here. And so you'll notice though that the price of HTT 3000, as expected, trades less than Hex, which is at the top here. So HTT 3000 is in yellow, HTT 5000 is in blue, which trades less than HTT 3000. And then HTT 7000 in green trades less than HTT 5000, again, all because of that time to redemption. And so the key here is to think about, well, who would want to buy these time tokens? Why would I buy HTT 7000? Well, as we just discussed, we know that HTT 7000 is going to be redeemable for Hex, but it's trading at less than Hex right now. So you effectively can lock in a fixed rate of return. If you were to buy HTT 7000 right now, again, it's trading at like a 34% discount. You lock in that rate of return guaranteed, because you know eventually you'll be able to redeem it 1-for-1, because eventually this green line and this orange line are going to converge in the distant future. So time token, if you want to buy a time token, there's a logical reason for it, in that you'd have liquidity, you have Hex exposure, but you have additional return on top of Hex exposure, and you can always trade in and out of it at because of these liquid trading pools. So the buyers of time, yeah, go ahead.
So basically what you're saying here is that a really interesting and cool strategy you can do with these is you can stake out your Hex, pull out the HTT tokens, go and buy more Hex with it, because Hex is more expensive, right? So now go and buy more Hex, make another stake, possibly one that's big enough where you can pull out more of these tokens, and you can keep it rolling in that manner where you just keep buying more Hex, making more stakes. But then here's what happens during the bear, when, you know, Hex is obviously going to go down in price. That's when you buy the HTT tokens back up, all right, with just accumulated funds from your job, right? And then you go and you start ending these stakes just to restake again for another round of them. And yeah, you can literally keep that laddering like that.
Yeah, right. It's especially effective if those time tokens are really expensive, because, you know, if a token's expensive, then you want to be the minter of that token, because you're minting these pricey tokens and then you can sell them at a high price. And so, and the crucial concept here is that anybody can mint Hex time tokens. It's, you know, there's no minting window. They can be done at any time, as long as you create a stake. For example, if you want to mint HTT 7000, as long as you can create a Hex stake ending on day 7000, you'll be able to mint HTT 7000 in an equivalent amount to the value of the stake. And so that's where the two sides of the markets come in, is that it's rational for people to buy the Hex time tokens, but it's also rational for people to sell the Hex time tokens, like you're saying, Nate, is that you want to take a loan out against your Hex stake. And so you mint these tokens and then you sell it for Hex. That's very rational too. So you have these two sides of the market that are going to interplay with each other. And it's part of the reason we think, the time tokens will converge on like a really efficient pricing. And that's what you need for a successful market is, both sides need to have their, distinct reasons for making a sell, or, you have to match buyer with seller, and, you need a compelling case on both sides.
Now, let me add, as you begin to take in and recognize that, all right, there's a rational argument to want to be on the sell side at times, and a rational argument to be on the buy side, you can also extend that across the curve. It might be the case that you look and say, gee, the day 5,000 price looks very rich or expensive. Well, then maybe that's the one you mint and sell into. And then you say, but the day 3,000 looks really cheap. Well, you could sell what was rich, use the proceeds to buy what's cheap. And that's called a curve trade. You just buy one part of the curve and sell another part of the curve, and you're capitalizing on that difference in time that you see.
Yeah. So the example that you're highlighting, C3, is that HTT 7000 and HTT 5000 are trading pretty closely in price.
Pretty close. More close than I would assume, right?
That should be
More,
something.
I agree.
With a 5-year difference in ending your being able to redeem those tokens, that's pretty close.
And that should be tradable, right?
Right. 5 years is a long time, especially in crypto. And yet the price difference there is pretty marginal. And so one obvious strategy would be, you can make a stake ending on day 7,000. You can mint HTT 7000 and then sell HTT 7000 for 5,000. And you basically expedite your stake at like essentially, there's obviously, very marginal costs with trading and stuff, but you essentially speed up the time to maturity on your stake if these tokens are trading at essentially the same price. You could get your principal back maybe up to 5 years earlier at no cost if these tokens, are trading, like they are now,
while still retaining your day 7,000 stake.
Yeah, right. That's the key, is that you've traded out your principal, or you've minted tokens against your full principal 1-to-1, and then you trade for HT 5000, but you retain your T shares. You retain all future rewards in this stake, which is crucial because it makes it more flexible. You're not blowing up your entire stake. You only you could be very precise with the size of your loan, and if you want, you could always pay it back if you wanted. But in the case of the strategy I just mentioned, that would be a very optimal strategy, I would argue.
Yeah, and as long as you buy those HTT 7000 coins back before that stake is up, then you can redeem them back for your Hex.
Well, so let me add to that though. So your stake would end, and you would forego all the tokens that you've already minted, but you retain all the tokens that you haven't minted against, or you retain all the Hex that you haven't minted against, which in this case is fine because you got the Hex already. Does that make sense? Like yes. And so in that case, not paying the loan back is not like you're not actually destroying any of your capital. You're not destroying any of your gains.
You've extracted it sooner.
Yeah, you've extracted it sooner. Yeah, exactly.
So we have HTT 3000, 5000, 7000. What if someone doesn't have a stake that goes out as far as 3000? Are there any other ways to create value for those type of stakes that are a little bit shorter than maybe 3 years from now?
Yeah. So first comment would be that as the protocol matures, we're going to see the number of maturity tokens fill in. So now currently it's just a short, mid, and long-term time token. We expect in the near future here we're going to have more time tokens come online that are going to be more frequent. So you'll be able to play within more maturities. On top of that, though, there is, and this is a bit of a complicated subject, but just to explain it briefly, you have the ability, just because a stake doesn't end on day 7,000 doesn't mean you can't mint HTT 7,000 against your stake. And the reason being is that the reason why you can mint a time token is because whatever day that time token matures, the system has to ensure that that number of tokens will be available in your stake on that day. And so let's say if you have a stake that ends on day 6,900, but you want to mint HTT 7,000, you could still do that, because if for any given hex stake, your hex stake is still has value and has proceeds 100 days after end stake. With that being said, there's a late end stake penalty, which is enforced by the Hex protocol. And so, granted, if you wait 100 days after your end stake, your proceeds will be lowered, but there's still proceeds, and you could still mint. You could still take out a loan against the proceeds on that future date, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to make sure the collateral has to be there if you take out a loan. And as long as we can guarantee the collateral is going to be there, you could take out a loan on these HTTs. You just have to be aware that your loan amount might not be as high because you've picked a day where the projected end stake proceeds are lower than they would otherwise be on a day where there are no late penalties. Does that make sense?
That's a practical implication, right? I mean, if you match your end stake date with redemption date, what you have is the most efficient amount of tokens you can extract, because the protocol doesn't have to make an allowance for inaction, but the farther away you are between end stake date and redemption date, the more the protocol has to reduce what it lets you extract, because it has more to protect in case you do have inaction.
And vice versa, if you have a stake that's on day 6,000, you can still mint HTT 5,000. You'll just have to ensure that you pay those back by day 5,000, where you're going to have a penalty for that 6,000 day stake.
Yeah, you're going to have an early end stake penalty.
Yep.
And that's a different. That's the Hex protocol has a different function for calculating early end stake, as we know. And so the Actuator protocol respects that penalty that Hex is going to apply, and it'll lower the extractable amount by however much that penalty is calculated as. So you have, and that makes for some really interesting alternative strategies, because maybe you have a stake ending on day 7,000, and you might be able to mint HTT. So you'd be able to mint HTT 7,000 because of your stake ending on day 7,000, but maybe you really want to mint HTT 5,000 because maybe HTT 5,000 is trading at a really high price, and you can instead choose to mint that token and sell that for Hex and maybe get a much higher loan value. But just know that you have an extra responsibility when you go that path, because your stake is potentially subject to emergency end stake by the community on that day if you don't return the loan. So that is a special case where if you set the time token, if the time token matures before your stake, you need to make sure you return those time tokens before those tokens mature. Otherwise, your stake might get EES'd by the community.
Yeah, so you're increasing your risk there, because you're essentially don't have your full amount to pull out, and emergency end stake reduces your protocol. Obviously, you have to take the least amount of value based on what the worst case scenario is.
Exactly.
So that would be this vault being emergency end staked, and so that's the most value that they could take out.
Yeah, the protocol determines what is the minimal amount my stake might be valued on that future day, and that's the only amount that you're able to extract against. And that's how we enforce the one-to-one backing.
And something else that I think is important to note as well, these are for HSI stakes, right? Essentially built on the Hedron protocol. So if you staked natively, you're not going to be able to extract value. It has to be staked through an HSI, correct?
Correct. Yep.
And so I just want the community to understand that. So if you go to your native stake and be like, hey, why can't I extract value here? It has to be HSI. So you finish your stake, get your Hedron, then end your stake. Everybody's happy.
Which highlights, the brilliance, of the NFT model and all Alex's work that he's already done. We're building on the shoulders of giants here, where we needed the NFT model to make this possible, because we needed the ability to transfer HSIs, and you need the ability to limit the functionality of a stake and expand the functionality of a stake, and that's really only possible in the HSI wrapper.
Yes, I just wanted people to understand that in case they missed that.
Yeah, but it's why we're super bullish on the HSI model.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of good value there. A lot of good value there, and I do believe there'll be some interesting things happening with Hedron in the future. So that's what's great about this entire Pulse chain ecosystem, right? Is that it's building on top of each other. We're now compounding value from one program that was built to another program that was built. In the future, I'm sure there'll be more built on top of these programs, and this is really building out an ecosystem. Being able to do it in an ecosystem where the gas fees are so much cheaper compared to Ethereum is beautiful, and that's one of the things I love about Pulse Chain. Now, can you do this with HSIs on Ethereum as well?
We're just on Pulse Chain right now. We're trying to hit kind of a critical mass on this side, and we haven't closed that option off. We're exploring the idea, but right now it's just on Pulse Chain.
It's on the better protocol. I mean, Ethereum for. I think there are some benefits, right? There are some potential ways to help reduce gas fees with hex stakes with something like this type of protocol. And obviously that's the big issue with Ethereum and staking with Hex. But
can I ask you a question? Would you, if this was available on Ethereum, would you use it? Is it a product you'd get use out of?
I probably not as much because of the gas fees. If the gas fees were fixed, it'd be a little bit easier to use. But as currently constituted, I don't use Ethereum as much as I used to.
Sure. Yeah. I'm just trying to get a sense of on the ground
there
here
would have
where people
to
are
be
at.
major changes on the Ethereum net in order to, I think, encourage the smaller users to, because it's essentially a whole bunch of smaller transactions rather than just the big one that has the huge payout. People aren't minting Hedron as much over on Ethereum because the amount of Hedron that you get versus the cost of the mint is just like it's way off skewed and imbalanced.
Well, notice this. That's a really good point. But as we've been contemplating this, is it worth launching on Ethereum? Is it helpful to the community? The point you just made that for smaller users, they're priced out of being able to do hex stakes, right?
Yeah.
But they might not be priced out of buying HTTs.
Yes. So there is that's the flip side of the coin. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, because if they can buy HTTs, then they're essentially getting a potential to mint that EHEX, right?
That's right. Now they have a native return in EHEX terms.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I had not thought about that. I'm glad that you brought that up. Dang. Yeah.
It's actually a really good idea.
The HTT.
I got one question.
1 second, go ahead, Nathan. I'll say what I was gonna.
Yeah, it's a little bit not as off topic, but it was kind of passed over, and I think this is an interesting idea. So are you guys planning on only being like Ethereum, like Hex on Ethereum and then Hex on Pulse Chain, or is there an idea of like maybe you go over to AVAX or Sonic or somewhere over there?
Well, we'd only be able to deploy wherever Hex is. The Hex protocol itself is natively deployed. Maybe we could do some interesting things with bridging.
ETH proof of stake, ETH Classic.
Yeah.
All right.
So I was going to say for people that maybe can't mint or can't stay EHEX, it's almost similar to like buying an HTT token on the open market is almost like bidding for an HSI stake on Hedron in a sense, right? You're trying to buy something at a discount so that you can then hold and mint 1-to-1 and get your hex, or end stake and get your hex.
Yeah. Well, right. Both are returning native hex. You're getting a native hex return over time. You're earning in native hex terms. They just have slightly different mechanisms, but they're enabling you to do it.
Yeah, that is an interesting thought process because of the challenge of hex of staking a small amount of EHEX. Because of the cost to end stake it, this would potentially maybe give people an opportunity if they believe in EHEX long term. I mean, I think most people are pretty heavy in PHEX, as far as the future. But with EHEX selling at such a discount, there are some people bullish on that. Yeah. Okay, so we have the HTT tokens. I think we have a pretty good idea of how that works. Essentially, your Hex stake is your vault. You pull out your value, and then you can use those tokens for other value. So we talked about trading, then we talked about some arbitrage opportunities. What about staking, liquidity pools? What do you have? What's been built there? What else can they do with the tokens?
Yeah, so I think the next big topic would be liquidity providing, because obviously this entire system depends on there being liquidity around Hex time tokens, and just because Hex time tokens are fungible doesn't mean you're gonna have somebody to sell into. So here's what's interesting about the liquidity provision with Hex time tokens is that when you think about liquidity providing, you think about what are the best, what liquidity pools have the lowest level of impermanent loss, and it would be the stablecoin pools. The next best thing is going to be two assets that are highly correlated, and the more tightly correlated, the less the impermanent loss. And in the case of Hex time tokens, you kind of have something similar to the providing liquidity with stable coins, because again, the HTT is it's basically just a wrapper around Hex with a time delay. As you can see with these USD prices, these tokens are going to be extremely tightly correlated, and there's a floor here with those time tokens that the market is eventually going to step in and isn't going to accept levels that are too low. But remember, it's never going to accept a level higher than Hex. So you have this tight window that they're going to trade in, and so you have minimal impermanent loss, but it's denominated in Hex. And one of those tokens if you're providing liquidity on PulseX with these Hex time tokens, one half of the liquidity is going to be in these time tokens, which again are increasing in value. So from that perspective alone, I think it's not just attractive, but it's distinct from any other. I guess a close analogy would be like providing liquidity with the Maximus tokens in Hex, where you have that type correlation. And then on top of that, so we've connected our. There's the Actuator token, which if you don't want to touch the Actuator token, you don't have to touch it. If you want to make use of this system, you could still deposit your stake and extract the liquidity and extract the loan out of it. But the Actuator token's purpose is to share in the revenue produced by the system. And so every time a time token is minted, there's a 1% fee applied to that minting event. And all those fees go to the Actuator token holders. And 100% of those fees go to the token holders. So anybody who holds Actuator token, if they've what we're calling vault, if you vault your Actuator token, you'll be able to receive a pro rata portion of those fees.
And are those fees paid in Hex?
It's paid out in HTTs, and okay. So it's effectively Hex. You have a tightly correlated asset with Hex, but it's going to be the HTTs obviously have that discount relative to Hex.
Yep.
And then so the connecting piece here is well, how do you acquire the Actuator token? And that is the answer there is that we have these liquidity farms where if you've deposited time tokens, if you deposited your Hex and time tokens into one of these 3 PulseX pools, these are kind of our flagship pools where time tokens have liquidity. And if you've deposited liquidity in here, you could take those LP tokens and then you could farm it. You could farm it here where you can earn Actuator token. And so 75% of all Actuator that's ever going to be minted will go to these farmers. And that takes place over the course of 3 years. So just to summarize all that, the staking piece I think is especially attractive because you have 3 sources of income. If you pursue this route, you have, for starters, in order to acquire Hex time tokens, you'd need to create a stake, or you could buy Hex time tokens. But if you created a stake, you get the benefits of staking. And then if you extract the Hex time tokens and supply them in these liquidity pools, you get all the trading fees in these liquidity pools with those Hex time tokens that you minted, and it's going to be at a minimal amount of impermanent loss. And then on top of that, you could take those time tokens and you can deposit them into these farms. So you effectively have 3 sources of income for one investment, if you will.
And these are the current APRs, 140% and change?
Yeah, that's correct. Obviously, so I mean, it's obviously fluctuating, but
No,
It's
it will
actually,
always fluctuate.
yeah.
yeah, one more point on the liquidity providing, and that is that while the volatility is low and therefore the impermanent loss is relatively low, additionally, you don't have any impermanent loss away from Hex because all your assets are Hex based.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a good point. What is the impermanent loss relative to? It's relative to Hex, which, obviously we're bullish on Hex, and we think of it as like this reserve asset in the pulse chain ecosystem, where if, at least, one strategy or one perspective on the Hex asset is that if you can't beat the return on a Hex stake, you shouldn't be, pursuing that investment strategy. So Hex staking needs to be, your baseline. It's your risk-free rate of return, if you will. If you can't beat that rate of return, then you should just keep all your assets in Hex. Is at least, from a personal standpoint, that's how we see kind of the market treating Hex as an asset, especially with the fact that it has this concept of a yield curve, which is really important, and we think it's what distinguishes Hex, I think, in a sense, from all these other assets that claim to be reserve crypto assets. So I maybe jump into that topic really quick.
Sure.
So let's start with what we know, and so we know about the attractive return profile on Hex staking. So this chart, there's nothing crazy new here. There's 3 points on this chart, and it's the projected APR on a given Hex stake if you created a stake today that ended on, in this case, day 3000. So if you created a Hex stake today ending on day 3000, you can expect roughly a 10% APR. If you ended your stake on day 5000, you can expect this APR, and then your APR increases the longer your stake is.
And that's with present system parameters, right?
That's under the assumption that the average payout per T-share, I think the last 30 days, is the payout per T-share moving forward through time. So we make a few, we think, sane assumptions about these numbers, but it's a reasonable estimate. And so this chart here is a crucial, and we could look at it in terms of total return. So if I staked today ending on day 7000, I could expect maybe roughly something like a 277% total return. So this is a crucial benchmark, or a crucial anchor, that we want to look at all of that. We want to benchmark all investments relative to this. One of those key investments that we've been talking about is these Hex time tokens. And so you'll notice, and this is striking, actually. I don't think we've expected this, which is exciting. It's that the Hex time tokens are have a total return that is far, far lower than the equivalent Hex stake rate. And the example is extreme on the Hex time token HGT 7000. And so there's over a 200% difference in total return between HGT 7000 and Hex stakes ending on day 7000. The reason why that's surprising is because it is trivial to create a Hex stake on day 7000 and mint HGT 7000 and sell it for Hex. And so that sequence of trades I just described would allow you to basically capture all of the value that's the gap between here represents value that could be captured by stakers who monetize their stakes. And so this is where, let me layer in one more piece to this. And this is where it gets a little mind bending. But we have this concept of amplified staking. And this concept is, and Nate, you referenced it a little while ago. This red bar is the theoretical rate of return you could achieve if you did that sequence of events I just described. So if you made a stake ending on day 7000, you minted HGT 7000, you sold for Hex, and then you restaked, and then you rinse and repeat that process over and over again. In this case, if I did that 5 times, I can amplify the number of T-shares. I could continually create new stakes. because I can continually take out a loan against all these stakes I'm making. And you can, in theory, if these numbers, if the payout per t-share holds through time, this is the projected amplified stake reward that you'd achieve. So anyway, that's pretty, we're going in pretty deep now.
700% sounds good.
Right. The number looks good, right?
That's the emotional part for the folks at home. Like, for those of you guys like that aren't interested in charts, 700% return for basically, like the peanut brain diamond hand example is you put in $100, you stake it, you get back like $90 or $80. You take that $90 or $80, you buy more hex, you stake it, you get back $70 or $60. You stake it, you get back 50, you stake it, et cetera, until you end up at this particular point in time. So like
it's a recursive
at home that are, what's that?
Recursive staking.
There you go. Recursive staking. So for those of you guys that are having a difficult time understanding this stuff, that's essentially what this is you take your initial $100 investment and you turn it into $800 at the end of the, or $700 at the end of the day. So it's just like, this is what they're talking about. So please continue with your explanation. I didn't mean to interject there. This is just, that's the juicy red meat for the folks who are in this for the money and the entertainment.
And it does add a little bit of risk too, right? Because you're going to need to pay back those Hex Times tokens at some point in the future. So you are taking on a little bit more risk. The more,
not if they're matched. Go ahead, RJ. Not if they're matched.
Yeah, Bill, you could describe it briefly, and then I'll give an example of why that's
right. Remember the idea of matching. If you're matching your end stake day to the redemption day, and you don't pay anything back, you've already gotten rewards that you've deployed. The end staking will come and you'll get everything back to you after the encumbrances you might have from your HTTs get paid off. So there's still return above and beyond what you were able to extract that you will get. Of course, you won't get the value of the HTTs that you've sold because you've sold it, but then you redeployed it into a new stake. So the principal, you're not losing any principal in that deal. You're getting an amplified return on your principal as the net result.
So if I understand that correctly, right? I make my $100 hex stake. The $100 is gone, but whatever I get, like the yield from as a result of that stake, like the $100 worth of hex, right? I'm just calling it dollars for ease of translation. The $100 is gone. If I don't do anything, if I don't pay it back, if I don't go and chase down and get more HTT tokens, then that gets eaten up by the contract, by the protocol, and then everything that's the yield on top of that goes back to me, back into my pocket and things like that, right?
Correct. But if you took your $100 principal back and used it to make another stake, then your $100 resides in that stake, right?
Damn.
So you're not getting it from stake one, but you are getting it from stake two. You're spreading it across multiple stakes such that when it's all coming back on that day and you add it all up, you didn't lose any principal. You got your principal with an amplified return.
Just don't tell
I like it.
Don't tell Michael Saylor about this, because then he'll go and do the infinite money printing glitch on the Actuator protocol instead of on Bitcoin.
Nice.
Now there is the last 10% of a stake's life, right? All the rewards accrued there go into an escrow,
right?
And those are not collateral for HTTs, right?
Yeah, you can't mint HTTs against that, but it doesn't mean you forego that amount. It just means that if you fail to end your stake yourself as the original staker, those rewards starting 3 days after your end stake will start flowing to whoever chooses to end the stake. Yeah. So basically, and there's a point where it becomes more profitable to end your stake, even if even with the gas fees, it's going to be more profitable to end the stake just so you preserve that capital. And it's on both sides. So the original staker has a disincentive to make sure that they end their stake. And then the community has an incentive to end the stake because they get rewards if the stake goes unended for too long. But so I just wanted to run through just actually make a stake in real time here. So this is on mainnet. So I'll make a stake here. I'm just going to stake 5 hex, and I'm going to end on day 3000. So in 2028. So you can't see my wallet here, but I just signed a transaction, and so under the hood, it's talking to the Hex protocol and it's creating a stake, which is also creating an HSI because they're built on that contract as well. And so now notice that there's a new row that just showed up in here, which is the stake I just created, 5 hex principal, 0 hex in accrued rewards. And so I don't have any accrued rewards, obviously, because the stake has just started. But once I've made that stake, from there I can go to the actions tab, and then I can extract hex time tokens. And notice that I choose my redemption day. So I'm going to mint these hex time tokens, and I choose which day the time tokens are going to be redeemed on. In this case, it defaults to day 3000 because that's the day my stake ends. And the amount I can extract is 5. And it's 5 because that is the current value of my stake. That's the amount of hex that I will be guaranteed to receive back at end stake. So I'll go ahead and extract that amount, 5 hex time tokens, redeeming on day 3000. So now it's just talking to the Actuator protocol, and it's confirming that those are valid parameters. And once it extracts, this amount will drop to 0, and then the amount extracted will increase to 5. And notice that if I didn't do anything else, if I never chose to end stake, I never returned my HTTs, these are still valuable because they're hex. So I still have essentially 5 hex. Again, this is assuming I never ended my stake. I still have this amount that I have that is in my wallet that is effectively hex. And any amount that accrues in this column here, any hex that grows, I will have ownership over that amount. And so what the protocol does when end stake day arrives is, let's say a community member decided to end this stake. The protocol will withhold 5 hex, and that 5 hex will go to whoever owns the loan, whoever owns the amount loaned against that stake basically has claim on that underlying hex, that being the principal. But the accrued rewards retain, those still flow to the original staker. So
and you still have HTT tokens.
Yeah, and you still have your HTT tokens, which you can exchange for hex. So the point being is that it's a loan. It is a loan, but it's also a very precise loan where it might be rational to choose to just let your stake get ended by the community, or you can even end it yourself. And it may be rational not to pay back the loan because you don't necessarily have to, because you still retain ownership in all residual rewards that accrue to the stake. And maybe you don't want to pony up the principal that you extracted to return the original loan amount. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
This
This
could almost be used as an exit ramp, like an off ramp. Like if people had a whole bunch of hex right now and they wanted to still be in hex and receive the price of whatever the today value is, they could take their hex, stake it all out, get the HTT time tokens today, right? Sell the time tokens, sell the HTT, and still have the only thing that they lose is their principal, and they still get, if they just never pay the loan back, they still get all the accrued hex rewards at the end stake day, and the only thing that they miss out on is whatever the principal amount of the hex is that they withdrew all the way back in the beginning or whatever. This is very interesting.
So
the cool thing about that is if you sell the HTT tokens when hex is at, say, its top, right? If hex was at 55 cents and then you took out the HTT tokens and sold it for dollars there, you've taken out your original principal. And so what you then could do is during, say, a bear market, when everything drops back down to a penny, right? What you're able to do at that point is just let it end stake. And because it end stakes, all of your other stakes then get extra rewards by being fed by your emergency end stake. You just simply pull out the original principal you had, and then you restake that, maintaining your T shares.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily be an emergency end stake if it went to day 3,000, 5,000, or 7,000, because the community would just end stake it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it would be a standard end stake in this example I just made. But yeah, to your point, Nate. Yeah, if you have solid predictions on bear market, bull market cycles, then you can. This becomes more compelling because then you could start to pull out. You could still make those long-term stakes, but you could pull out at the times that you think are more optimal.
Yeah. So notice the impact here. Some are concerned that, well, gee, giving folks some liquidity might be harmful, but we begin to see that I think on balance, and what we expect is on balance, it's a net helpful, because more and more people, and we've already heard users come back and say this to us, why would I not do long stakes now and larger stakes when I have some ability to get to it when I need to? And so that confidence of capital allocation is going to promote hex staking longer and larger, which is probably going to overwhelm whatever might happen with the use of the liquidity. And that's assuming that the liquidity were leaving the system, which a lot of it won't. A lot of it will go into these sophisticated strategies.
And a lot of stakes, a lot of stake stacking.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're almost like you're almost like
going to be a lot of hex stakes ending on 7,000.
Well, that will broaden.
T-shirt,
but yes.
Yeah. That T-shirt rate's going to just boom fucking go expansive on day 7,001. Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, ultimately, what this is doing is not only is it causing people to want to stake longer, but not be afraid to stake exactly as you said there, Bill. But it's also going to cause more people to want to stake and gather more T shares. And now that's the interesting part to me. This isn't necessarily if I were to like look at the overall of what's the best strategy and what's the greatest thing you get out of this protocol, it's actually the T shares. You never have to sell another T share,
right?
Ever.
Yep.
You simply just keep pulling everything out, and like talk about T shares are only going up. This is going to be like hyper up at this point.
Yeah, and we do have a tool for like if you want to analyze your T share exposure. So if you go to the portfolio tab, in this case, I've pasted 2 pulse addresses, and yeah, you could see your there's 2 bars here. One is your intrinsic hex value that'll mature on that given date, and so the x-axis is time. And so, for example, in 2040, roughly around that day 7,000 we were talking about, I have 2 stakes here that'll be maturing, and yeah. So we're trying to provide tools for you to kind of see the way you could sculpt your portfolio more through time, because you have like C3 said, you have that confidence of being able to pull out liquidity if the time arises.
Very cool. Very cool. I love that we've talked about a few different ways that you can provide value for Hex and sort of give more value to the Hex community, get people to stake their Hex longer, by de-risking a little bit. And then also, being able to use pools that are pretty tightly correlated, that probably produce very little, if any, permanent loss. There'll always be some, very little impermanent loss because they're so tightly correlated. Being able to earn actuator tokens and then stake those, and so there are many ways to sort of use this protocol to potentially increase the amount of tokens in the end, maybe Hex tokens that you're going to end with by the time your stakes are up, and that's really what this is all about. Everything that we try to do in our community is talking about getting more coins, right? We don't really want to look at dollars most of the time. Most of the time, we're looking at how can we increase our coin count without increasing the capital that we're putting into the market. Now, of course, most of us are always increasing the capital in the market. But on top of that, if you can also cultivate more coins in ways that are easy to use, easy to understand, brings more value to the person, and that's how long term you're gonna win. If you can continue to increase your coin count without needing to add more capital, that's a win for everybody.
And there's a variety of great ways to do that, from liquidity providing and different pairs to pools to buying HTTs, going longer stakes. I mean, all those things are incentivized here, and all of the various impermanent losses keep you connected to Hex.
Yeah, and there seems to be a bit less risk with other loan protocols out there with this one because everything is tied so directly to Hex.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that's right. Yeah, you're not. It's all measured in native Hex terms, and it's all there at the time you put it in. So there's not a notion of upside down in this protocol.
Right. If you pull out a stable coin and Hex goes through the roof, well,
yeah. You're wrecked.
Yeah. Where in this case, you still have your underlying value in your stakes or in the coins that you've pulled out.
Right.
Which are correlated to Hex because you can redeem them later on.
And that makes the whole system inherently stable, which, by the way, we've had 2 security audits and 1 financial audit to verify all this stuff. But that makes the entire system inherently financially stable because there isn't this what if it goes upside down scenario.
Right.
Yeah. And, especially if you're new to liquidity providing, new to vaults and taking out money, having less risk when you're newer is better. As you become more of an expert, you can take on a little bit more of a risky strategy because you have that understanding. But for people that are new, a protocol like this that can help, that will have less risk than other ones, I think a good place to start.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's what the protocol, like it's revealed something interesting about Hex that I don't think I saw originally either. And it was that it's not obvious to me that like any other native crypto asset can have a yield curve like Hex can. And so in other words, like if I wanted to know how much, let's say if I could tell you that you could buy a Bitcoin time token and it's redeemable in 2030, what discount would that Bitcoin time token trade relative to Bitcoin spot? We have no idea, and we have no mechanism to determine that. And that's a problem because you can't value the future of Bitcoin. Like you don't have, there's a loss in market signal in determining like what is the value through time of this asset? What are the varying discounts through time?
Mm-hmm.
But what's unique about Hex is that we have a mechanism to determine the time value of Hex. And it's, again, you're not relying on some centralized custodian or some centralized lender. You're not relying on a counterparty. You're relying just on the Hex protocol. And again, the Actuator decentralized protocol in this case, to create that market for the time value of Hex. And as we alluded to at the beginning of this, the stream here, that is crucial in attracting new types of users. Like the more options you have on a given reserve asset, the more you can deploy really sophisticated strategies, and you can hedge in unique ways, and you can take advantage of opportunities that arise. So it means Hex is this first class asset that a lot of these other crypto assets just can't replicate.
Let me add a better
Bitcoin.
Yeah, well, very much so. I'm going to borrow a Richard Hart, called a quote, but it's a fuzzy quote because I won't get it exactly right. By the way, day one Hexagon, I've been involved with this from day one, following almost everything Richard Hart's done and said in streams and otherwise. So a lot of good experience with the man, quite smart. But he said early on in Hex, when he was describing his experience with the team building Hex, is he observed what he called emergent properties of Hex that were coming out, things he didn't expect. When they designed this, they thought one thing, but then as they deployed it and watched how people behave and the system behaved, they noticed that there were elements that unfolded that they didn't expect, but were emergent as a result of what the system did. Likewise, we believe we're going to see more emergent properties unfold within the Hex ecosystem, because now the Hex we have this native Hex yield curve, which treats Hex as a reserve asset that it is, and enables far more building and measuring economically than could be done well before. And we think that will unveil emergent properties within the ecosystem as well.
So I just want to say, Mr. Future President Donald J. Trump, I think Hex would be a great asset to hold as a reserve currency. You know, maybe a little Bitcoin, maybe a little Hex, Bitcoin better Hex, whatever you want to call it. But
fund.
I think a strategic Hex fund would be really important for our government. I think that would be great. And
SHR, nice.
And look, if they're going to hold it for 20 years, they might as well just, you know, stake it out for 15, and they need some money, take out some HTT tokens.
Yeah,
this is so
great
cool.
way to measure your financial house and manage it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
I think honestly, this is super to the point, super concise. I think I understand the protocol really well. Like I said, a lot of the plays and the opportunities for people to potentially increase their coin count or make money or extract value if needed. What else are we missing? What haven't we talked about yet?
Man, this could be a really cool onboarding tool. Like that's what I'm thinking of for this, because one of the things that I do when I onboard someone into Hex is I make them a 4/5 stake, so they're in it for the long haul. I kind of like rope them into it. But I'm thinking, because I normally make it as an HSI, so I tell them like, hey, like, because I've been here in your presence while you're creating a wallet, you know, like there's a possibility that I or someone else saw your seed phrases as you're writing them, so like tokenize it and send it to a different wallet, and I'll show you how to do that. La-di-da-da-da. And I'm just thinking, like, man, how cool would that be if, like, I make a system where it creates a 4/5 Hex stake for somebody, or like I'm onboarding someone, create a Quattro or a day 7,000 Hex stake, right? Would probably be a better example than a 4/5. But like, you create this Hex stake that is just super long out there into nowhere, and then they immediately get back like 90% or 80% or whatever the value is of HTT at the time. Right, they can immediately liquidate that. Still be in the system. Be like, hey, if you want to watch this for the next, you know, fucking 15 or 14 or 12 or 10 years, however long it is, then you can sit here and watch this thing grow, and you have you know, most of your money back right now that you can you know, go and cash out, or you can, I don't know, go and buy Fartcoin or whatever, you know, the thing of the day is. Right, whether it's like, you know, some Pepe derivative, or like if they want to go buy Bitcoin, that's fine. Or if they want to buy, you know, Hex on Ethereum, or if they want to buy Pulse Chain or whatever, you know. Like, I think this is super cool, and this is very valuable for people who onboard folks using super long-term Hex stakes such as myself. So it's freaking fantastic. That's the thought that I had as we're going through this.
RJ, go ahead, Bill.
It gets very tangible for people if they go through that drill once. Take some amount, whatever might just be exploratory for you, but you've got to get your feet wet. Step out, take some amount, pick a spot to stake, create the stake, extract the tokens, the HTTs against that same end stake, so you're matched up, receive your HTTs, and sell them back for Hex. And examine the condition you're in.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is so beautiful.
Some people call that a money printer.
Something like that.
We like money printers, don't we, Nate? So there are some other analytical tools here. Like it'll show the chart showed the discount that each one was compared to Hex, right?
Yeah. So this guy you're talking about?
Yeah. So people want to say, okay, if I take out a vault, if I take out HTT tokens, what's the value that I'm going to get? You know, what percentage less based on my Hex stake?
Right, a rebate, if you will. But you know, it's you know, you have collateral that's backing that loan, that rebate. So yeah, it's an interesting chart. You know, if you're going to get your feet wet, if you don't want to make a stake yet, just keep an eye on this chart and see how these numbers evolve, and you know, just ponder about you know what does this mean? What is this telling me about the underlying Hex staking ecosystem that, you know, the discounts are where they're at? Yeah, there's a lot of interesting information here. You know, as we go down, you know, you could see, if you want to see just the time token liquidity, you could see, you know, how the liquidity has grown, and so we're up to you know, in dollar terms, we crossed, you know, roughly 1.2 million. So you have a good amount of liquidity to play with there, without having too much slippage and price impact. And then I think I keep returning to this chart here. I think this is we're going to keep drilling home this chart because there's so much information packed in the gap between the time token price and the stake price. I think when we originally conceived of Actuator, we expected these charts to be layered nearly on top of each other, because there is just, the larger the gap here, the more the opportunity that's presented to the staker. And so I think this is just kind of a key concept.
Here's a way. Let me speak to this chart for a second. Another way to think about this chart is it sort of like letting you be the bank. What's a bank do? They borrow money from us in the form of cost of funds. They pay CDs, they pay whatever. They do what they have to do to get money in the door. And they have some rate that they pay us to get the money in the door. What do they do with the money? They turn around and make loans, which are assets to them, at some higher number, and their goal is to capture the difference, what they call the margin, the spread, right, between the two. That's what you're looking at here. Here's a case where the blue line, if you are the staker and the seller of what you minted and extracted, your cost of funds line when you sell is the blue line, and the rate at which your stakes are earning is the orange line. So you can capture that difference and do so recursively if that's what you choose. But that's what that's showing you, is how to capitalize on a cost of funds line and choose to deploy it back into assets at the earnings line.
So one of our panelists here has to run a few minutes early before we close out. So Mr. Will?
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, I got to hop out. I got to go save my friend who is lost in the snow. But Bill, RJ, it's been freaking phenomenal talking to you guys. I'm going to have to watch this on replay probably 2 or 3 times to extract all the value out of it. Thank you guys so much for creating this super awesome protocol and for doing this explainer and everything, all the media tours that you guys have been doing. I'm in the Telegram. I've like watched so many of your guys' streams, and just like, it takes like 7 times of listening and watching a thing in order for it to like finally click and get it. So I highly encourage all the folks at home to rewatch this stream as many times as possible and go find RJ and go find Bill's, like, go find their other streams. I know that you guys have talked to Sloth. You guys have been on Nate's podcast. You guys have done the whole thing. So thank you so much for being here today. For the folks at home who don't know who I am, my name is Will Stevens. My name is Will Stevenson. You can find all of my social links at the Pulse domain will.pls.fyi. Thank you so very much for having me on, guys, and I will chit chat with y'all later. Deuces, and remember to degen responsibly.
Thanks, Will.
Yeah, Will.
Take it easy, brother. I think we got one super chat before we get back to this. Mr. My man Abdul with the 50,000 dongs.
Nice.
When Actuator on each W.
I was wondering when he'd show up. It's just a matter of time,
There he is. That man's everywhere. What a hard worker.
And he did say another comment, which we'll say, or regular ETH, I guess. I know we touched on that, but you guys are considering thinking about it.
Yeah. Fast Bill, I saw he DM'd us in Telegram, and it has prompted lots of conversations with us and internally, and we're testing the idea on just regular users as well, just to see the scope of interest there. So definitely something we're exploring.
One thing I
ran that up, and it seems that the best use case right now for doing it on ETH, even with the fees, is because it enables and allows the smaller participant who cannot do staking due to gas fees, but he could buy HTTs. And so the smaller participant on ETH could have a way to earn native Hex. And that mechanism might be the only cost efficient way to do it.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay. So we're about 90 minutes in. Anything else you guys want to touch on regarding the protocol? Anything we missed? Anything you think that's important for us to know? Honestly, I think you guys are doing a great job just being so to the point, so easy to understand. And Probably doing this a few times, that's helped. But really great job with that.
I would encourage folks that want to learn more, please look at our docs. RJ's done a great job at making the docs very thorough, very understandable. There's a lot of things out there like the farming schedule over 3 years, the tokenomics of the Actuator token, the rollout of additional liquidity pools, for different spots other than 3,000, 5,000, and 7,000. There's a lot of good content in those documents to along with concrete examples to read through.
Highly recommend. I read through all the documents, and very easy to read. A lot of great information in there. And I know we've covered some of it tonight, but look, anytime you're going to invest in a protocol, anytime that you're going to extract value from a stake or from a vault, you should always fully understand what you're getting yourself into. So I always recommend doing your due diligence. Always recommend doing your own research. And these documents are a great way to do that. They're really in depth. A lot of good information there.
Yeah, right. So you don't have to take our word for it. You can look at the code's open source. It's audited and it's verified on Pulse Chain. So you could find all those links at the actuator.finance. It'll take you to the Telegram, the DApp, the docs, and everything else. So,
by the way, you can
also, I've used it too, so I can attest that it works.
Nice.
You're fully entitled all to your Hedron with this, by the way. This isn't cutting you out of any of your Hedron.
Right. Yeah. True.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I actually went through and tested that during the launch of it, and I wrapped it over into the Actuator. I actually pulled out, I think it was like 1884 token, HTT 1884, and there, of course, there's no liquidity there, so I couldn't do anything with it. But the fact that I was able to do that means that for more advanced people, you can actually make liquidity for other HTT tokens. So that's going to be, and I think that's a vital thing that people do not understand, is that the future of this isn't you've got 3,000, 5,000, 7,000, and then that's it. Once I think it was Will who made the saying that, there's going to be a ton of end stakes at the 7,000 mark. Well, yeah, maybe so. But at that point in time, you got the 7,000 to maybe like a 9,000 and like a 10,000. It's going to continue it's going to continue on. And this is something for the future. And even if there's a particular day you as a whale, right, are looking at like, hey, can't we just have, this one being liquid? Well, you can go make that liquidity pool yourself. You are able to do that. So just encouragement. But with that being said, yeah, basically what you can do though is after you've paid back the HTT tokens, right, you can then, unwrap it off of Actuator, put it back onto Hedron or the HSIs, and then from there you can mint your Hedron, and it's all just fine. Nothing is hurt.
And anybody who was a participant in the HSI auctions back with the Icosa Hedron, I'll tell you what, I did a lot of them. They work great in here. So come learn, understand, and get that capital allocated and shaped the way you want. You're going to find all kinds of great ways to apply those stakes.
Yeah, fantastic. And Nate, to your point about the time tokens and the different maturity dates, we picked starting points. We picked what we thought were sane defaults, which are HTT 3,000, 5,000, and 7,000. We have no idea how the market's evolved, and because we don't know that, like you said, you can mint any token for any hex day you want. Like you said, you could mint HTT 1873 if you want, so yeah, there's a market for that maturity. Then anybody, there's nothing stopping you from creating liquidity around there.
And anybody HTT, they could make an HTT and a liquidity pool on a given day if they want to provide liquidity to it. This is going to be a community tool. It is now. And yes, the farming rewards are a particular incentive, and we're using that to sort of jumpstart the yield curve. But over time, as that fades away, anybody can pick a redemption day, create an HTT, and populate a liquidity pool with it. The market will vote.
Right.
That's great. Yeah, and it's fantastic. So what we usually do is we'll do one more round of shout outs here in a second, and then we'll get your guys' final thoughts. If there's anything you want to share, tell us where where people can find all that stuff. That'll be great. But yeah, everybody, just a reminder, go look at these documents, and if we're good, we'll take that down to chat shout outs, and then get some final thoughts. Miss Producer, we can go to chat shout-outs here. Let's see, we got the first one. Fast Abdul, I think C3 is posing for a mugshot.
You see me do this too much.
Yeah, the background's kind of, your background game is weak. Can't even see
It's
anything.
an RV.
Oh, makes sense.
He's off the beaten path.
Yeah.
Frank White, Bang Bang Pulse Gang. Welcome, Frank, as always. The Herc, Morning Degens. It's very early where the Herc is. Miss McGinnis tweet, yeah, exactly. Woke me up from my deep slumber. Yep. Conspiracy Crypto, what's up, fam? Thanks for joining. It's been a good show for you. A Wild SJ appears. Thanks to Actuator for being a Pulse Chain Tour sponsor. Yes, thank you. Looking very much forward to that. Funkmaster Hex, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Good evening to you as well, my friend. B-Fam, this is an absolutely dope protocol. Hex and Actuator will melt faces. It really is. Very, very well-built protocol. You can tell. Let's see. A couple more here. Shout out to Nate's hair. The Herc.
Thank you very much, Herc. You know, maybe I'm just born with it, or maybe it's Maybelline.
And I think that does it for our chat shout-outs. Everybody, thank you for joining us. We appreciate all of the chats, all of the likes. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please do so. Feel free to join our Telegram, which you can do with the QR code on the screen at DRT Join Now. RJ, where can the people find you? Anything else that you want to say before we close out?
Just, all the socials were Actuator Finance, at Actuator Finance. On to get to our website, it's actuator.finance. To get to our DApp, it's app.actuator.finance. And there's the Telegram activity's been good lately. Good content in there. If you want to come in there, if you have questions, join us in Telegram.
I will join you in the Telegram.
See you there.
Bill?
Yeah, just please check it out. We've been very responsive to ideas and input about the UI. People have thrown little requests and recommendations in the Telegram, and RJ's been just on it. And so we keep making improvements there based on what people say is important for them to see.
Excellent. Nate, anything you want to add, buddy? Where can people find you? What you got going on?
Yeah. Well, you can find me on the YouTubes at The Ascending Man, the YouTube channel. I went into a little more depth than we did here today. I think today, though, the way that this is set up is just absolutely perfect for anyone who's just starting to get into it. If you want to know more, go ahead, head over to my channel, and we'll get a little bit further into this. But other than that, I think that this is a very special protocol because, again, I've been yelling this to the high heavens. Literally, we have the financial institutional building, which is Hex. And from there, then all of a sudden, you get, some wizard who comes along and puts on another layer there, which is Hedron. And then Communist comes along. You got Axis and Alive that's setting up their building to help this building. And now all of a sudden we've got Actuator on top of it as well, just opening more doors. It's just a continual evolution of the powerhouse that is Power Chain. And it's projects like this that absolutely need to happen if Pulse Chain is truly going to be just one of those mega powerhouses. So thank you guys for making this. I absolutely love it. And I'm looking forward to what you do in the future.
Thanks, Nate. Yeah, honestly, again, I think this is fantastic. I think people get a really good overview without going too deep. If you do want to go deeper, go to Nate's channel. I know he did a very, very long show with you guys. But this was really great for our community. I know that a lot of people have been interested in us having you on and hearing about the Actuator protocol. I know for me, even though I've listened to you, this was super helpful, and I've learned a lot. Also helped that I read, all of your documents. That helps as well. But you guys really helped to explain and give me good ideas of how you can use the system, how you can use the analytics to benefit, your potential different ways that you can play around with your Hex and your HTT tokens, your farms, your LPs, etc. So for all those of you who don't make it, find me on on X at anonymous_bean, which I'll put in the chat. You can find us in the Telegram. I am there constantly, even when I'm not around or home or on vacation. I'm still usually in that chat answering questions and helping the community. And we have one of the best communities in all of crypto. And so I'm excited that it continues to build. And we wouldn't have as good of a community if it wasn't for people like Bill and RJ coming on here and allowing us to talk about everything that's going on within the Pulse Chain community. Don't forget, sign up for the Pulse Chain Tour for March. That's going to be fantastic. And super excited, hopefully, if I can go to see everyone and meet them in person. And I think that is about all that we have. Also want to thank Miss Producer for doing a great job, as always, behind the scenes. I want to thank Nate and Will, who's not here with us anymore. And then RJ, Bill, thank you guys again. If you just want to hang out in the green room for a minute after, just decompress the show. And I think that's about it. So I just want to thank everybody. We know that here, your time is your most valuable asset. And so choosing to spend your time with us is very appreciative. And so, ladies and gentlemen, remember to degen responsibly, and we will see you on our Sunday flagship show and Friday on our book club. See you all soon.
Thank you.